Hello YouTube! It's the end of 2017 and it's been a great year for game streaming. And this is ultimately going to be an end of year review for Parsec, but I also want to take a moment and just share a little bit about my streaming journey this year to provide a little bit of context for why I think Parsec is a cool product moving forward. Um, so I've always been into streaming. Streaming for me just gives me the flexibility to be able to pick up a game and play on a myriad of different devices in different parts of my home, and that allows me to actually have a gaming experience where otherwise I probably wouldn't. I've got kids, and the opportunities to game are kind of sporadic. So sometimes it's at night, sometimes it's in the middle of the day, and I rarely have the opportunity to just lock myself in my office and play a game like I used to when I was younger. So for me, game streaming is not just a nice thing; it's kind of an essential thing because without it, I probably don't get to play hardly ever. So I've always been looking and I've always had interest in finding the perfect streaming solution so that I can have that, experience that makes me feel like I'm sitting at my desktop even though I'm on something else or somewhere else. And so that's something that I've always strived for. So when OnLive came out years ago, I bought it right away and was pretty disappointed. The latency and the quality was really out there. It was really bad, at least for me. And the library of games that they allowed you to play was pretty restricted, to just kind of B titles for the most part, stuff that I wasn't really that interested in playing. So it was a cool introduction to the idea of cloud gaming, but ultimately didn't pull it off very well. And then from there, we had Nvidia with their Shield streaming game stream service. We had Steam with their in-home streaming service. And I started off with Nvidia, just really got into their product. The Shield Portable was my go-to for a very long time just because it really did deliver on that need. It fulfilled it. Where I needed a way to just pick up something in game, that was kind of awesome. That was, really the answer to that. And then I kind of moved away from it for a little while, as they went off in different directions. So like the Shield TV is very cool, but they, pretty much stopped focusing on the portable, and the portable was what I really liked. And at the end of the day, the video quality when streaming to the portable was awesome, but there was still a lot of noticeable input lag or latency. And so it was good enough to get away with some, stuff like Final Fantasy 14. That was kind of my go-to for that device because you didn't need to have high reaction times, and it did, even if you had a little bit of latency, it wasn't a game-breaking thing. But it didn't allow me to play a lot of things that I would have liked to have played. So while it was cool, it wasn't the answer. Now, when Steam introduced their game streaming service, their in-home streaming, I jumped on that too, and that experience was pretty good as well on the video side, meaning that the video looked really good. It was smooth. There weren't tons of artifacting, at least for me, but it failed to deliver in two essential places. One being the input latency, which is pretty close to what NVIDIA was delivering, and the other was just inflexibility. You could do it to computers and you could do it to the little link thing, but you still really couldn't do it easily away from your home. And that was kind of, it wasn't a deal breaker for me, but it was on my list of things I would have liked to have seen. And so I've kept my eyes and ears open, just looking for something else that might fulfill that need a little bit better. Looking for the next thing to step up and top what I'd already experienced. And that brings me up to the end of this year. So Destiny 2 launched for the PC, and I was super excited. Something I've been looking forward to and wanting for PC for a long time. And I was very disappointed to find that Destiny 2 did not play well with virtually any gaming system, that I was aware of, like streaming system. It didn't work well with GameStream. It didn't work well with the Steam Link because of Bungie's policy on overlay systems, meaning that they don't want you to have anything with an overlay involved in the game, and so they make it very hard to capture the screen and pass along controls to it. And I found some little quirky workarounds, but they were pretty involved, and they took a lot of setup, and they took a lot to get going. It wasn't a very smooth experience at all, and I still had a ton of input latency at the end of the day. So for me, that was the kicker, that my systems that I was using weren't really working anymore. Well, what I ended up doing was I threw up a video on YouTube showing the solution that I had found that involved using several different programs together to get Destiny to stream from a PC to another PC. And somebody left a comment on Reddit saying, "Hey, cool that you figured that out, but have you tried Parsec?" And at that time, I'd never heard of Parsec, and I had no idea, what he was talking about or who they were. But I'm a pretty open fella, and like I said, I was still kind of looking. I was trying to find something that would best what I'd already experienced. So I took a peek, and it turned out to be awesome. So my experience over the last few months was that, number one, as soon as I tried to launch Destiny 2 on Parsec, it worked the first time. Controls were perfect, the video was perfect, and to my shock, I discovered that it actually solved one of my huge outstanding problems, which was that the input latency was virtually nil. It wasn't there at all. It felt like, when I was in another part of the house on my Surface Pro, for example, and I streamed a game to it, it felt like I was sitting at the desktop. You couldn't detect that there was any lag in the controls whatsoever, and that was shocking. It was the first time I'd ever experienced that. And so you can say, it'd be fair to say at that point that Parsec had caught my attention. And so I played with it a little bit, tweaked it out and got it, to be perfectly smooth and perfectly matched for my network at home, and I've been using it ever since. So for me, my new gaming system is my gaming PC that's upstairs, and then I use a Surface Pro 2 in other parts of the house. It gives me the flexibility to sit down and play on the Surface's screen itself if I need to. So if I need to go play in the kitchen or at the dining room table or whatnot, I can do that. If somebody else is tying up the TV, but I can also take the Surface 2 and just dock it into the TV and sit back on the couch and play with that. And so it's kind of been a match made in heaven so far. And so that was a few months ago, and I've enjoyed it for a few months. But I wanted to create a quick end of year review, just discussing what Parsec is, what I like about it, what I think it can still do better, and just to kind of tie it all with a bow and just summarize everything, so that anybody that's out there that is in a similar boat where they either want or need a streaming service for their gaming, that they become aware of this new player that's in town. It's not a big name like Valve or like Nvidia, but when it comes down to it, if you want the answer right now, Parsec beats them. It beats them in both video quality, in frame rate, and in latency. So if you're looking for the best game in town, this is it. So on your screen, you'll notice that I've got Parsec open. This is the current Parsec client. They released this version a couple weeks ago, so this is their updated look. And it's pretty simple. You don't have to be a rocket scientist to use this. You basically download and install this client on both of the machines that you're going to be using. So it supports Windows, it supports Linux, it supports Mac OS, it supports Android as of right now. And so you just go to the respective website. And actually, this is true, just a quick note. You go to the website no matter where you're playing. Even if it's on Android, you have to go to the website and get it. So this is not in the Play Store yet. But you basically just download your copy on each of the machines, and you allow hosting on the machine that you're going to be streaming from. So up here, this is my host, and nobody's connected right now, but this is set up for hosting. And you can actually see that right here. There's a button to enable or disable hosting. And then you go on your other device, you connect to it, and you just start playing. I think for me, one of the things that makes Parsec really successful in terms of gameplay is that they have a really cool system to emulate a 360 controller, which virtually any game that has any controller support will support out of the box. And so like just as some examples, I can take an Xbox One controller. I've tried a Logitech F310. Whatever controller you happen to hook up to your system gets passed along to the streaming device, like the client that's actually doing all the streaming, as a 360 controller to ensure compatibility. And it does it really, really well. It even will do it inside of the Xbox app for Windows 10. So if you wanted to stream your Xbox to something else, technically you could do that. And that's pretty cool. So Parsec at its core allows for that simplicity. It just does it. So it emulates the controller, and it's really smooth. And in terms of like what you can tweak and what you have to do, you can tweak things like your video quality. You can optimize it for your network. You can optimize it for the resolution that you want to stream at. It'll stream up to 2K right now. So if you have like a 4K TV downstairs and a device that can pump, a signal to that, then you could technically up the ante a little bit. And it'll do 60 frames a second, which is something that a lot of services don't offer. So like when you look at Nvidia or look at Steam, they don't do 60 FPS very well at all, and Parsec definitely does. And overall, there's not much more to it in terms of setting it up. You can set up a friends list where you can decide whether or not friends can join you. So Parsec allows you to virtually hand a second controller to somebody else that might want to play with you, which is awesome for co-op games. I find it to be personally awesome for emulators. So I can play like Cemu, for example, and emulate my collection of Wii U games and have somebody join me from across the internet and play that. Or the same thing for Super Nintendo or Sega Genesis or what have you. And then on top of that, there's a great library of co-op friendly PC games. So like an example would be like Overcooked. Allows for 4-player local co-op, or with Parsec, you can hand those controllers to other people and they can join you. So on this window, you can add people to your friends list, and then you can determine how much control they can have. So you can determine that if you uncheck this stuff, you could have them just view it as a spectator and watch you game, or you can allow them to participate in that. So that's pretty cool. And then under the play window, there's not much here either. You can manage the PC that you happen to be on. So do little things like changing the names. If you've sent anybody any invitations to game on your computer, to join you like we just talked about, you'll see those links that you sent them, the invitations rather, in this list. You can revoke those if you want to, and stuff like that. So there's not much to it here. And when I say that there's not much to it, I mean that in a positive way, meaning that you don't have to know a ton about game streaming to jump in and experience this and have a good time and be really successful with it. And over here, you can invite people to play on the computer. So that's where you potentially would create a link, maybe send it through a Discord chat or an email to a friend that you want to join you. And all they do is click the link and load up Parsec on their own machine and join you. So it's awesome. Now, with all of that said, I want to summarize the positive first. So the positive is that Parsec really truly achieves ultra low latency where nobody else does. I don't care who it is, there's nobody else out there that is doing what these guys are doing in terms of latency. The video quality of Parsec is on par with the other bigger services like GameStream and with in-home streaming on Steam. And they actually push out 60 FPS, and they do it in a way that actually works. So they actually maintain 60 FPS if your machine and your game can operate at that speed, and they do it flawlessly. So those are the really positive things. And then on top of that, like we said, the client itself is actually very simple. It's pretty elegant, and it's easy to set up. So there's not a whole lot to this side of it. Now, I won't really say that there's a whole lot of negatives about Parsec, but I will throw out a couple opportunities. So things that I hope to see from Parsec in the future. So just little examples. So like for one example, when I go to my friends list here in the app, I'd love to be able to click on a friend and have a button to send them an invitation from the friends list itself. And while I don't think that that's an essential thing, I think it would be a nice thing. Largely because, number one, I want this to have more purpose than just sitting here and controlling their permissions. I think if you're going to have a whole tab dedicated to friends, that there should be more that you could do. So that's one reason. And then the second reason is that when you think about how people are currently used to handling a friends list, whether it's in Steam or on a console of some sort, we're used to doing everything with our friends from the friends list. So that's where we've been accustomed to going in order to send them invitations and messages and whatnot. So I'd like to see that added here. So it's not essential, but I think it would be nice. The other thing is that when you stream Parsec right now, to move on to the next item, when you stream Parsec right now, it streams the entire desktop of your computer. And that can be a positive thing if you're sitting at another computer or another device that has a mouse and keyboard attached. That's a great experience at that point. But if you're trying to play with a controller like I had talked about doing, then starting off with a desktop is not really helpful. So I talked to the developers over at Parsec about that, and they said, hey, are you guys ever going to add a controller interface to Parsec, something that we can enable that would be controller friendly? And I was told that they don't plan on doing that themselves, but what they are thinking about doing is putting some sort of option into Parsec where you can say that Parsec will open a certain app when a session starts. So you could use that to open up your own controller-friendly interface. So that could be an example like a Steam Big Picture, or you could use, like for me personally, I love to use Big Box. And so it does give you a way to have that experience if you want to, but it's not implemented yet. So as of the end of 2017, that's not a thing. So I'll add that to the list of things that I'd love to see them add. And in addition to all of that, I mean, there's not much else if we're being real honest. It's a pretty complete product even right now, and it's still technically a beta product. So if we go right here and look at settings again, it shows that we're on build 139-15, and that's one of their beta builds. So they haven't officially released it yet, but even so, it's still incredibly polished and it's ready to be used. And it's, there's not much else to add to the wants column. It's pretty complete in my opinion, and I think that that's great. Well, I will say this. So we mentioned how Parsec is available for Mac, for PC, for Linux, for Android. It's also available for Raspberry Pi, which is intriguing, and we'll talk about that in just a second. But one thing that you'll notice that's missing from the list is iOS. So right now, there is no Parsec client whatsoever for iOS. So you can't use an iPad or an iPhone or even an Apple TV and have a Parsec experience on those. And clearly that's an opportunity. How many people out there have those devices that could benefit from Parsec? So I'll add that to my list of things I'd like to see, and I think that they will. I haven't specifically asked them what the plans are, what the status is for those devices, but I couldn't imagine that they're going to skip them. So hopefully maybe even in 2018 we'll see that come to fruition. Now I did mention Raspberry Pi, so that brings up an interesting point. What I tend to find is that Parsec is going to appeal to two different groups of people. So one group are going to be people like me that already have a pretty powerful gaming PC at home. So they've already invested all that money and built something that can handle games right now. So they already own all that hardware. So for that group of people, Parsec becomes an extension of that computer. It allows you to experience it on other things. Now the second group of people, and this is a group that I think Parsec is targeting heavily. The second group of people are going to be people that may not have a powerful PC or even have a PC at all. And Parsec allows you to create a cloud computer somewhere. So like examples, you could use Amazon's AWS server service. Parsec is partnered with a company called Paperspace, and they're offering different rates to rent a machine with Paperspace and install Parsec and your game library on there, and then stream that to another device. So that brings up an intriguing point, which is that you don't technically have to have a computer to enjoy computer gaming anymore. You can rent a computer with one of those cloud services, and then you could stream Parsec to something as cheap and simple as a Raspberry Pi. And they've got plenty of videos showing how well that works, and it opens up a whole new a whole new world of potential. Making this making PC gaming accessible to people that just never would have had the opportunity before, prior to what Parsec is doing today. And that's pretty cool. I mean, for $30. I mean, think about it. Raspberry Pis are $30. So for $30, you could give yourself access to an incredibly powerful high-end gaming experience. And that's pretty awesome. Now, I will say this. So like we talked about, we're talking about two groups of people. If you have the gaming PC, you probably don't need the cloud gaming PC. So if you're in the first group, you probably haven't experimented much with the cloud side of it. And I'll say that that's true for me. So I haven't rented a cloud server, and I haven't tried the cloud side of Parsec. And so I can't really report on that, although I will say that I've studied it. I've watched a lot of other people use that part of Parsec, and all reports indicate that it's just as good as what I'm experiencing at home. And that brings up something. So Parsec allows you to have that great experience within your home network, but it has the potential to also allow you to have it outside the network, even if you're in that first group, the people that have all the equipment that they need at home. And I've tried that side of it. So I've taken my Surface Pro 2 and I've gone to a couple different places and I've tried to game. Now, the experience was a little underwhelming for me, but I know why. So it was choppy. I did get a connection right away, at the two places that I've tested. and I knew I had enough download at those 2 locations that it could have been good. So the problem though is that for me, I only have 12 megabits of upload speed on my internet connection. And I've talked to Parsec a little bit, and I said, hey, this is really choppy when I'm not at home. And they explained that right now Parsec is designed around you having at least 30 megabits of upload speed at your home. So they'd ideally like you to have between 30 and 50 megabits of upload speed, which makes sense. They're really delivering a high quality experience, and you need you need the pipe and the throughput to make that happen. The problem though is that there's a select group of people in the United States that can achieve that upload speed. That's not common. That's not normal. And honestly, for people to even have 10 or 12 like I do, isn't as common as we wish it would. It's just not something that we see very often. It's much more common for upload speeds to be like 3 to 5, sometimes 10. But the upload speed is something that's kind of ignored by service providers in the United States. And that's something that Parsec's aware of. So when I talked to the developers about that requirement, they said that they still really are focused kind of on the cloud side of this, and that's one of the reasons that 30 to 50 works in a lot of scenarios, because if you are renting a cloud machine somewhere, you can expect to have 30 to 50 available to you from that cloud machine. So that's good. But they realize that most people outside of the cloud gamers don't have that. So they talked about optimizing the system to work a little bit better at the lower upload speeds. And so I think for Parsec that's a big opportunity, so that those of us that enjoy it at home but don't really get to enjoy it away from home can have a better experience. And I'm curious to see what they do in terms of developing that over the next year in 2018. So hopefully that's awesome. But just to make you aware, if you're like me and you have less than 30 megabits per second, Parsec is not currently optimized to really stream well outside of your home. But it will stream really well inside of your home. So there's a use case no matter which where you're going with that. But that's an important note, and I think that would definitely go into the opportunities tab of Parsec. So altogether, that's really about it. So if you summarize all that, Parsec is greatly accessible. It's on most devices today, with the exception of iOS. It streams really well. It beats out all of its competition in terms of latency and frames per second, stuff like that. It's really cool because you can install it on the cloud, which none of the competition can do. And it's great. So I love what they've done so far this year. I haven't been with them since the beginning of the year. From what I understand, they've basically taken it from being a command line tool all the way up to this beautiful interface that we're looking at on the screen now. So that's a lot to look back on. They should be proud of what they've done over the short span of a year. And I'm excited to see what they do as we move forward into 2018. And with that said, I'd encourage anybody that's interested in trying to stream from a machine to another machine to take a look at Parsec, because I don't think you're ever going to do better. I think what they're doing is awesome. I think that the technology behind what they're doing is really impressive. They've done some things that other companies haven't done, so they're really unique. They're not just taking the tried and true formula and the tried and true tools and just trying to squeeze more out of it. They're reinventing the wheel as they build their streaming service. And I think it's worth your time. And on top of all that, and I guess I probably could have said this at the beginning, but on top of all that, Parsec is completely free. The only time you pay any money is if you happen to rent a cloud server, through their service, like if you want to get one from Paperspace. But you're really paying Paperspace in that scenario. You're not really paying them. So they're doing this because they want to see this industry move forward. They want us to have that experience. They want us to have a tool to do this correctly. And hats off to them for that. That it's a tool that we technically could be paying for, and it's awesome that they're just doing it for free. So yeah, take a look. Go to parsec.tv, download the client, get it on both machines that you want to test, try it out for free, and let me know if you have anything that comes up. I do have other videos available that talk about tweaking Parsec to get the most out of it. If you are like me and like to play mostly with a controller, I've got videos about using controller interfaces and about using the controller, so take a look at those as well. And we'll just end this by saying I'm really excited about Parsec, and I hope that you will be as well after you try it out, and we will see how this goes moving forward into 2018.